At first glance, Times Beach looked like any other quiet Midwestern town nestled along the banks of the Merrimack River, just 17 miles southwest of St. Louis. Rows of modest homes, a single gas station, a diner with cracked leather booths and burnt coffee. It was the kind of place where the biggest worry was flood season, and everyone knew their neighbors. But in the early 1980s, Times Beach began to vanish, not in some metaphorical sense, but literally. One by one, families disappeared. Mail stopped arriving. Streetlights flickered and died. Eventually, the name itself was erased from signposts, from state records, from Google Maps. Today, if you try to find Times Beach, Missouri, you won't. To understand why, we need to go back to 1971. The federal government had just introduced new environmental laws, including strict guidelines on the disposal of toxic waste. Across the country, chemical companies were left scrambling to find cheap, legal ways to get rid of their byproducts. But not everyone played by the rules. One waste oil hauler, a man named Russell Bliss, saw an opportunity. He wasn't a villain in the cinematic sense. No sinister trenchcoat, just a guy with a truck and connections. When the Northeastern Pharmaceutical and Chemical Company approached him with barrels of leftover dioxin, he took them, no questions asked. Dioxin, the same compound used in the chemical herbicide Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. A chemical so potent that even microscopic exposure can cause birth defects, cancer, and organ failure. Bliss mixed it into motor oil and sprayed it along dusty roads to keep them from kicking up dirt. He thought he was doing a service. He sprayed on-horse arenas, farms, neighborhoods, including, unknowingly, the streets of Times Beach. At the time, the town didn't think much of it. A local government contract paid Bliss to spray oil over gravel roads, a common practice to keep dust down during hot Missouri summers. But something began to change. Dogs started dying. Children developed strange rashes. Birds dropped out of trees. The townsfolk grew uneasy, but there was no single event to spark panic, just a steady drip of illness, misfortune, and unease. Then, in 1979, the Centers for Disease Control began investigating mysterious illnesses around Missouri. They traced it back to Bliss and his dust suppressant. Soil tests in several towns revealed abnormally high dioxin levels, some hundreds of times above safe limits. Still, no one mentioned Times Beach. Not yet. In December of 1982, a freak flood struck. The Merrimack River spilled its banks, washing through homes and highways, coating everything in a thick layer of mud. When the water receded, the EPA arrived to assess flood damage. That's when they tested the soil and froze. The dioxin concentration was off the charts. They ordered more tests, then more. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the highest levels of government. Nearly the entire town had been systematically poisoned. Every street, every backyard, every playground. Days before Christmas, the federal government made a decision. A press release was issued calm and clinical, barely picked up by national media. But inside, it carried a terrifying sentence. Residents of Times Beach are strongly advised not to return to their homes. By January, soldiers began cordoning off the town. Yellow tape, hazmat suits, quarantine signs, families were relocated, some permanently. The government offered buyouts. Enough to leave, but never enough to rebuild. Some resisted. One couple handcuffed themselves to their porch. Another refused to leave without their dogs. But resistance was futile. By 1985, the town was completely evacuated. The post office shut its doors, schools were boarded up. Bulldozers followed, and over the next decade, the town was dismantled, block by block, house by house. Every structure demolished, every tree uprooted, soil was dug out and incinerated. By 1992, the cleanup cost had ballooned to over $200 million. And then it was gone. Not just physically, but administratively. Times Beach ceased to exist. The zip code was retired. Maps were updated, GPS coordinates rerouted. On Google Maps, it's just a green smudge. No history, no label, no past. In its place stands Route 66 State Park, a name so innocuous it feels like a joke. Tourists pass through daily, snapping photos by a replica gas station. unaware they're standing on top of the most toxic town America ever created. But beneath the picnic tables and gravel trails lies a ghost. Thousands of barrels of contaminated soil, memories buried in concrete vaults, and questions no one wants to ask. What if the government had acted sooner? What if Bliss had said no? What if the town had never been sprayed? No one was ever criminally charged for what happened. Russell Bliss died on April 7, 2024, in Missouri, but had always maintained that he didn't know the oil was dangerous. Napaco went bankrupt before any real accountability could be enforced. And the residents, those who survived, were scattered across the country. Some never spoke of Times Beach again. Others filed lawsuits. A few still meet in online forums, exchanging photos of what it used to be. It's hard to find a photo of Times Beach now. The official records are buried in government archives. Most footage was destroyed. Even on YouTube, search results are sparse, drowned out by conspiracy theories and amateur drone footage. But for those who lived there, it's not just some missing town on Google Maps. It was home. It was birthdays, weddings, snowstorms, first loves. It was real. And then one day, it wasn't. So the next time you open Google Maps and scroll past that unmarked green space off Route 66, remember, sometimes things don't disappear because they never existed. Sometimes they vanish because someone made sure they did.